Hello and welcome to a very misty Nurburgring as we get ready for the first of two races for this weekend's Formula Renault 3.5 series. A fortnight ago we were in Moscow, now we are at the home of the German Grand Prix as we head into the dog days of summer. Hungary, Paul Ricard and Jerez will round out the championship, but with our championship points leader Carlos Sainz Jr. back on form, Tom Gaymore, it looks as though the Nürburgring should see the Red Bull driver returning to normal transmission.
Yeah, absolutely, Martin. Let's use the word summer lightly, shall we? As you can see from the feed, the weather is fairly inclement here in Germany, and looking at this track, it's quite a long run down to turn one, so Carlos Sainz Jr. with plenty of work still to do, and with rain spots on the camera lens, it's fairly ominous, isn't it? With
yeah, it's like this is today in the Ardennes, in the Eifel Mountains, which are close together. It's been very foggy at Spa as well. Everything was very much delayed there, and it's pretty foggy and misty here. Things were delayed this morning for qualifying sessions, and as you say, a few drops of water on the camera lens. It's been intermittent, drizzly spitting sort of most of the morning. Carlos Sainz is our championship leader, and the #1 car sits on pole position. Of course, he didn't earn the #1, but the chances are that he will allow Dams to have #1 on their car again at the end of the season, because unless something very bizarre happens, he is most likely to be our champion. Well, qualifying was really, really tight. Sainz grabbed pole by 25 thousandths of a second. That is the time it takes for one gear shift. Ollie Rowland second on the grid, Sergei Sirotkin, the Russian winner, in third, and Roberto Meri, who won in Moscow as well, fourth. And he was just 400ths behind Sirotkin. The top four on the grid covered by 800ths of a second. Yeah, so I mean, Tom, insanely close in qualifying.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of World Series by Renault in 2014. Very, very close at the front. So if you are right at the front, as Carlos Sainz Jr. is this morning, then you really have earned your stripes, so to speak. It's the nature of the Nürburgring circuit, though. Very, very technical here, but most of the cars running high downforce, and even though it's a reasonably long lap, you are pretty much separated by very slight margins. And, you know, you mentioned Carlos Sainz Jr. at the beginning of the show, Martin. I said to him after qualifying, was that ever in doubt? And he said, no, it was a big relief, because they've just come back from a really dire weekend in Moscow, haven't they? So,
well, you know, but even if you haven't, it is always in doubt. You can't always guarantee that you're going to get it. I mean, you know, you look at the Mercedes duo in Formula One, and it's always in doubt until you've actually done it. You know you've got the potential to do it, but actually producing the lap is always that little question mark. Ollie Rowland outside of the front row, and Carlos Sainz on the driver's left here, which gives you the grippier part of the track. A long look down into the first turn, though, for our pole sitter.
With Elf.
Cars on the formation lap here at the Nürburgring, coming down the hill into the Dunlop curve, the lowest part of the track, and then starting the long climb back up through the Michael Schumacher S's. Martin Haben watching the action here, and alongside me, Tom Gaymore. And Tom, you noticed not just the misty skies, but a lot of random bits of rubber on the track. There's lots and lots of black marks we'll see in especially in the Mercedes arena.
Yeah, in the arena especially. I think they've been doing some drifting, Martin. Very popular with the younger generation as we look at the grid. And certainly Carlos Sainz Jr., Ollie Rowland, Sirotkin, Meri, the front two rows are going to have to be aware of that. And you made the very good point when we were off air that if it rains, predominantly speaking, the outside line is the element of the circuit that offers up the most amount of grip, because there's no rubber there. But with all of that rubber, it could be quite a challenge for the drivers. Very, very slow speed through there, and they'll really, really struggle for grip.
Last two cars on the grid are Alfonso Solis and Cameron Twyman, both newcomers to the championship. So for the first time this year, Tech 1 with two cars on the grid, and Comtech return. They were running Nikolai Marchenko, but Cam Twyman steps up to a big cars for the first time from his Formula 3 and Formula Renault roots. Well, Pierre Delettre, the race controller, now with a bit of a worry. You can see that it is starting to drizzle a little bit more extensively. Everybody is on slick tyres, but how much grip is there going to be? The race is just about to start. Germany's Nurburgring, we are ready for the first race of the weekend, Formula Renault 3.5, and it is just starting to sprinkle again with drizzle. Not enough to abort the start, it would seem. Carlos Sainz on the right of your picture on pole position from the red-nosed Ollie Rowland. Green flag waves at the back of the grid. We are ready to go. Pierre Delettre is going to release the field. And away they go. Decent start from Sainz. Good start from the third row back. Marlon Stockinger in the Black Lotus. Somebody being squeezed down towards the pit wall, but Sainz gets it as they go 3 wide behind. And he's going to be Ollie Rowland, who holds on from Roberto Meri, trying to go around the outside.
Yeah, Rowland very slow away from his grid slot, but ultimately didn't lose as much ground as I thought he was going to. Sorokin puts a move on Stockinger. That was very, very robust.
Yep.
And gets it done in this opening lap.
Well, Stockinger came from 5th and Sorokin from 3rd on the grid, so Sorokin needed to get that place back to have lost only 1. Ollie Rowland, red, white and blue, and behind predominantly the red car of Roberto Meri Jr. trying to get by him.
Yeah, I just thought Meri would have the legs on Rowland down to turn 1. He's putting Rowland under a lot of pressure, certainly in the paddock as we look further back. That's Sorensen at the back of that train.
And Will Stevens in that little group as well, I think. And
Fantin as well. Everybody thought that Fortek might have the legs. Sorokin spun in front of Rowland in qualifying. Carlos Sainz Jr. punished them. And if this race stays dry, expect Rowland and Fortek to be very quick as the race progresses. Meri's done well, hasn't he? We're on board with this young man. He won here in 2008 in Formula Renault Euro Cup. He's been doing all kinds of different things. He's a European Formula 3 champion. He drives in DTM. And back in World Series this year, first-time winner, last time out in Moscow.
Yeah, he was, and it was a big win for the Zeta Course team as well. He's looking very anxious to get by Ollie Rowland. Rowland would do well not to get rattled here. Sainz isn't going to clear off as quickly as he did in Spa. That much is clear. He's only about 1.25 seconds, 1.4 away at the end of the first lap. And so Rowland defensive against Meri again, who sends it down the inside. Further back, you see the yellow nose of Pierre Gasly as they go 3 wide, way back there. Gasly a long way down on the grid in 17th. And he's battling with Mathieu Vazavière just behind Norman Nato. Vazavière, of course, back in the car after breaking a vertebra in his crash earlier on in the season in Monaco.
Yeah, they have Richie Stanaway subbing in that car, and he did a great job. Got a podium last time out, but Vazavière back in the car, and it's a real challenge for him mentally. I know firsthand what it's like to break your back, and when you do come back, you don't ultimately think it's going to happen again, but just not quite the same for the first few outings. You need to find your feet again, and then Vazavière needs the time to do that.
Well, fitness is so important in these things. I mean, these are brutal machines to drive, very physical, very hard on the body, and especially on the spine. You know, no suspension single-seaters always have been since time immemorial, really, but you can be okay and cleared to race. Being at race fitness is a different thing. Yeah,
just knowing what your back's going to react like when you hit the brakes for the first time at turn 1. You know, these cars produce a huge amount of downforce, especially with the high downforce settings that they have for this weekend, and maybe even more than the current Formula 1 cars, as Will Buller has
facing
stopped.
The wrong way now. Has he found a damp patch of curb and got spat off?
No, stopped on the inside. That's up at the newly renamed.
Yeah.
You said they've been renamed.
Yes, they've got a sponsor for it, something or other, but it's, you know, it's a bit bad for a German circuit to be renaming the Michael Schumacher S's as something else. Sainz, now Ollie Rowland with 2 purple sectors at the end of that lap has closed the gap down to under 1 second, and he's just crept a little bit away from Roberto Meri. So those opening 2 laps, or the first lap, just nursing the tyres. I mean, he was not going to be rushed by Meri to push the car hard. Now he thinks, okay, now let's just let it have its head a little bit, and Sainz is not getting away.
Yeah, this is a replay at the start. Look at Ollie Rowland, the red-nosed car on the left-hand side, very slow away. Carlos Sainz Jr. quick off pole, and then Rowland gets going. Meri just with not enough momentum to get around the outside. Stockinger with a very, very good start as well. Stevens knocking around on the inside. And all through
Lane and Fantin were easing themselves over towards the pit lane exit, weren't they? On board with our third place car, Roberto Meri, our fourth place car rather, Roberto Meri. And Tom, how worrying is that when you're on the grid and suddenly the rain is starting to come and you know you're on slicks and the temperature is dropping fast?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It really does feel as though it's raining quite hard when you're in the car, because on the visor the spots of rain are flaring off, and you've really got to just get down there and suck it and see, really. And that's why occasionally you see people make a mistake. On board with Will Stevens, he's very conservative on the inside.
Wisely so, I think. Yeah,
letting everybody sort of have a look at the outside. That's the million-dollar question at the Nurburgring. Do you go for gold on the outside, or do you play it conservatively? This time around, we saw no incidents, but sometimes, and you've seen it a lot, Martin, it only takes one car to make a mistake on the inside, and if you're on the outside, that's it.
Well, it's slippery, it's greasy with a few spots of rain, it's downhill into a tight right-hander. The option for somebody getting it wrong and torpedoing straight through the pack and taking out half a dozen cars is huge. The fact that they all got through is testament to the fact that the drivers at this level are really very good indeed. You can see how much rubber there is around the outside of the racing track. As you said, Tom, from the drift competition here, further on past the Mercedes Arena, it's not noticeable, but these cars have actually cleaned up the racing line. The racing line through the first few corners is the greyest rather than the blackest part of the track, which is the reverse of what you normally find. Now, pit lane not going to be required unless we have a real shower, but the forecast some of the teams have got yellow flags out. Who is that? That's for Will Buller's car still. The forecast some of the teams have got is that we may have heavy rain in the middle of this race, and it's long enough, 45 minutes, that if it rains early, that's not going to be survivable. Yeah, it's heavy rain, and it'll be interesting to see what happens if it does arrive. I mean, Fortec, very, very experienced, and they'll react to the track conditions, and that's what you do, don't you, Martin? I mean, you do weigh up whether or not it's just a quick shower or if it's there to stay, and you've got that very quick decision to make depending on where your car is around the circuit. So strategy will play a big part. Interestingly enough, Ben Barnicoat on the pit wall at Fortec there, an RSF driver racing in former Renault NEC and going very, very well. He's obviously looking at how Ollie Rowland's getting on and learning off him. Well, a great opportunity to come and take a look at the big class. You know, he knows what the 2-litre cars are all about, and you know, within this paddock, that's the great temptation in this paddock. If you come in 2-litre Euro Cup, the temptation then is your next move to be the big toys, and that's, you know, that's why we get so much continuity of the Renault family up through this championship, and that's a very strong element for any driver coming up in the single-seater ladder to be part of this. Not just the promotion, not just the exposure, but the natural next step, and it's a recognised good next step as well. Oh, hugely so. I'm a massive fan of the Renault ladder, and we're on board with one of the young drivers who's benefited hugely. Pierre Gasly learns his trade in 2-litre, won the Euro Cup Championship, got that budget to come up to World Series by Renault, currently second in the championship and doing a very good job. He's actually gone backwards. Yeah, he's stuck behind Roman Mavlanov, who started in 19th place. Now Gasly is having a real troubled time. That is the battle for 16th. But, you know, we didn't see exactly what happened to him at the start. You can imagine in the first few corners, he ended up tasting a bit of tarmac runoff area and maybe a bit of grass on his way round on lap 1. So Gasly struggling, as you said, second in the championship coming in here. But he is only 15 points ahead of Ollie Rowland, and he might get dropped a position in the championship at the end of this race. Yeah, I think, you know, for Arden, it just didn't quite work out. It was a very, very tricky qualifying session. The fog was down, and it didn't really get better till right at the end. And it's such a small margin between success and failure. We talked about that on the grid, didn't we, Martin? And for Pierre Gasly, as a rookie, didn't really get the best out of himself and the car when he really needed to. And, well, you don't have to be far off to be miles away in this World Series by Renault field. Well, he was only a second off pole, which in some single-seater championships was still heavy in the top half dozen or maybe top 8. Yeah, he barely was in the top 20 there. So that's a big mountain to climb. if he qualified where teammate Will Buller had in 13th, you know, another couple of rows forward, he might not be in the situation he is in now. He might be on the fringes of the points and still desperately trying to keep his championship chances alive. I mean, the good thing about this championship is that tomorrow they qualify again and they race again. So there's a chance to play a get-out-of-jail card and keep yourself in the hunt.
The World Series by Renault with Elf.
Italy's Luca Giotto helping out with the marshals, rolling his Draco racing car back out of the way. He was battling with Marco Sorensen for 10th place, 9th place in fact behind Oscar Tunio, and he is now being assisted out of the way. Will Buller's car is still where it was left, and we still have yellow flags out around the circuit as Carlos Sainz leads here at the Nurburgring in some fairly grim summer conditions. This is July in the Eifel Mountains, so a bit of drizzle and a bit of moisty morning. But Ollie Rowland in 2nd place, and Tom Gaymore, Rowland here in the red and white and blue Racing Steps Foundation car, has refused to allow Sainz to get away. They're swapping fastest laps now at every junction. Yeah,
they are. Carlos Sainz Jr. doing a very good job out front. You get the impression he's kind of neutralising Ollie Rowland's threat every time Rowland puts his cap in the mix. But that said, easier said than done. Both cars have a good turn of pace, there's no doubt about that. The Dams and the Fortec car running very quickly, and in the hands of these two drivers, very, very fast at the front of the field. But my gut feeling is Sainz Jr. is controlling this, and with 350 seconds of DRS, if Rowland does get close, you do have the opportunity to defend if you have any left. Mary still hanging on to the coattails though, and Sergei Sorokin in the second Fortec car doing a good job in
Sorokin has just set fastest second sector on this lap, so he's desperate not to get dropped as well. Then there's a little gap back to Marlon Stockinger in the Lotus with Matthias Lane, Pietro Fanti and Oscar Tunio behind him, Marco Sorensen, and then on board with Pierre Gasly. Gasly still deep in the mire, 16th place. Roman Mavlanov is the car in front, behind Mathieu Vaxavier and Meindert Van Buren. So there's Van Buren at the front of this little queue, and even Van Buren, that's only 13th. That's not going to pay him any points either. He's got to leapfrog this lot and then catch the next group in front before he's even within sniffing distance of a point.
Oh, so Gasly just ever so slightly outbraking himself. He locked the right front as he just had to pinch the brake, knowing that he was travelling too closely to the back of Mavlanov. But Gasly will be praying for rain. You can see the spots just getting ever so slightly bigger, and that was a mistake there from Vaxavier. And you talked about fitness earlier, Martin. Certainly as the conditions get tougher, Vaxavier is going to have to be on top of his game. Mavlanov now all over the back of him. And, well, as I said, Gasly praying for rain because he's driving his socks off for no return at the moment, down in 16th place. Arden just not at the races because of the conditions. It was a tricky qualifying session, and Mavlanov runs wide. Gasly tries to get his nose up the inside. Has he done it?
For the first time all race, no yellow flags there. Mavlanov just keeps his nose in front. There's an overlap, but Gasly couldn't capitalise. Not enough traction, but that is the first time anybody's been able to attempt to pass down the hill into that Dunlop curve, the downhill chicane.
Yeah, it's just not a big enough braking zone. It obviously, as you look at the track layout, looks as though it's a conventional hairpin, but the nature of the track means it is a fairly quick entry, and especially in these cars, they're so well balanced on the way into the corner, and the braking forces are huge, you know, anything up to 4G because of the amount of downforce that they produce. So difficult to get all the way up the inside. Certainly in World Series by Renault at the Nürburgring, it's really turn one, Martin, that is the only place that you can fully get up the inside, and you're going to need DRS to do that.
Well, what Gasly needs more than anything in this race is a pit stop. Unfortunately, if he takes one, then he's going to be a lap behind everybody else. Tomorrow, that will be part of the race, but today, not so.
Yeah, the other way round. He doesn't need a pit stop, he needs everyone else to have a pit stop.
There you go. Now, he needs something to break the stalemate, and
the rain.
Diving into the pits will be it. Do you know, I'm not sure, you know, they had trouble in qualifying. You can see Mavlanov leaving black marks on the road. It is getting more slippery. Gasly is still stuck, though. Pierre Gasly in the Red Bull car ahead of the Petronas turquoise and white car of Jazeman Jafar, and Jafar actually just a little quicker on the last couple of laps. Everybody's still setting fast lap times. Personal best popping up all over the place at the moment because Tom Gamer, although it is still trying to spit and spot with rain, the fuel load is coming down, the tyres are still hot, still got lots of grip from those big fat slicks, and so the car is actually getting quicker under you.
Yeah, a lot of the teams design their car to be reasonably quick towards the middle and the end stages of the race. The Michelin tyre allows them to do this because it's not like the Pirelli. The degradation is not as aggressive, so therefore once you've had the new tyre drop off, this tyre remains very, very stable for a prolonged period of time. As you said, weight pivotal, isn't it, in all forms of single-seater racing. So once the weight of the fuel burns off, these cars, still with a fair bit of rubber available to them, are very, very quick at the end of the race.
Mavlanov again, just not getting the bite he wanted in front of us on turn-in, drifted a long way away from the exit, from the apex rather, and that allows Gasly to line up. And the reason it allows him to line up because Mavlanov will have to have just paused a tiny fraction longer before chasing the throttle. Gasly getting very deep down into the first corner of this Mercedes arena, really sharp right-hand hairpin, then these two left-handers, then another tight right-hander. The way the track doubles back on itself, Tom, it means that if you get alongside, you can actually run wheel to wheel for several corners and hopefully get something out of it.
Yeah, you can. Easier said than done, but it is possible, as you say, all the way from turn 1 right the way out to turn 5. There is the element to be side by side and to pass. As we look at one Red Bull car, it's worth pointing out that Carlos Sainz Jr. in the lead Red Bull car, two different teams, has just gone fastest again. The lead gap now 2.2 seconds between the Spaniard and the Brit Ollie Rowland. And so, as I said, Carlos Sainz Jr. starting to control this race.
Well, still 20 minutes remaining for Ollie Rowland to try and find some answer to the pace of Carlos Sainz, but the fastest last time round, 1:44.1. Pierre Gasly's last lap, a 1:45.3. That's the difference between this man in his Red Bull car and Pierre Gasly down in 16th, because Sainz has got the whole track in front of him, clear air, nobody attacking him, and Gasly is stuck behind another car, turbulent air, not enough grip, more frustration, and that accounts for the difference in the speed, really.
Yeah, exactly, and also, you know, we've got to remember that setup plays a pivotal part. Maybe they've just gone the wrong way and it's very easy to do, but as you said earlier, Martin, the beauty of the World Series by Renault weekends is you've got it all to do again tomorrow. If this was GP2 or GP3, you might as well put your car back in the truck and go home, because once you qualify badly, your weekend's over.
Whoa! And Gasly finally submits to temptation, gets inside Mavlanov, the door is closed, and Pierre Gasly loses anything that he might possibly have been able to gain. And there is the slight chance as well that he might end up with a penalty for tomorrow's race.
I was just going to say, don't for 1 minute think that there's nothing to lose there, because these Renault officials are very, very fair. And if Gasly has let the frustration get the better of him and potentially ruin Mavlanov's race, then there could be a penalty coming his way.
Down the inside, oh, he is clear through, no contact there, comes back on. And then he's on the inside, and Mavlanov didn't leave them enough room to survive. Gasly had nowhere to go there. If Gasly is penalised for that, that's going to be unbelievably harsh.
It's going to be unbelievably harsh. I think it's a racing incident with the blame being stuck on Mavlanov. I think Mavlanov's come across on him. You talked about it a second ago, didn't you, Martin? When you do stick it up the inside, this is on board with Gasly. Look, he's just lunged. He's going to brake too late, but he knows if he gets the throttle down, he'll have the inside line. It's easily two abreast through here. We see it done all the time, and well, yeah. Mavlanov's just come across on him, I'm afraid, and yes, you can say Gasly's still got his nose in there, but he's entitled to do it. It's the nature of the track, and as I said, easily two abreast through there, and well, you can
It was
continue down
absolutely wheel-to-wheel racing. Neither had the advantage, and Mavlanov, if he even dares go into a steward's room and say, well, I didn't know he was there, right, get out until you've had your eyesight tested. Really, give me your license now. If you didn't know he was there when he was right alongside you and he'd already come across your nose, I mean, fair play to Mavlanov. When Gasly came down the inside, he opened the steering and let him go, and because that could have been easily an accident. Gasly overcooked it, came back in, he's damaged his nose wing. The right front tyre is absolutely shot. You can see almost it was down to the canvas where he flat spotted it, but they're just going to have to let him get on with it because he's just got to get back out there.
Plenty of frustration from Gasly. He's lit those rear tyres up, hasn't he? And yeah, it's a shame. That said, he had to go for the move. If he's going to go forward, he had to do it. Mavlanov didn't have the maturity to race wheel to wheel with him, and yeah, they both lost out, haven't they? And Gasly's day goes from bad to worse. But I've said he has the opportunity to do it all again tomorrow, and he's good enough to bounce back. He is the real deal. So, well, look at that. Carlos Sainz Jr. just going, that's the third fastest lap in a row for him. Now the gap out to 3.5 seconds, and he's gone even quicker again. So 4 purples in a row.
And what we're looking at here is the potential of one Russian making a move on a Russian-owned car. Roberto Meri in third. We're looking back at Sergei Sorokin. And there is the Zeta Course team. Their man in third place, Roberto Meri. Winner in Moscow, as was Sorokin, of course. So 2 winners last time out, battling for the podium spot. And Tom, we talked about it at the time with Sorokin, but especially with Roberto Meri, you know, getting that win for the team, it stops being we think we can, and it becomes we know we can. And then you start, your mindset changes to being disappointed when you don't win, disappointed when you're not on the podium, instead of thrilled when you are. And that's a big change for a team, especially one that's relatively new to the championship.
You just grow in confidence ever so slightly, because these drivers all say they can win, they all think they're good, but deep down when you put your head on the pillow, there's always that element of self-doubt, and self-doubt is a real catalyst towards, you know, poor performance. And when you actually go out and do it, you can then put your head on the pillow that night and go, you know what, I'm a race winner and I can do it again, I know what it takes. And then that element of self-doubt just releases ever so slightly, and you see drivers really progress with a stronger element of form. And that's what we're seeing here. You know, Meri and Sorokin very, very tightly matched and battling it out for a podium place where, you know, in races gone by, they could have gone off the boil ever so slightly.
Our 2 new boys in Formula Renault 3.5, battling for 17th place. Alfonso Chelis in the black and orange Tech 1 car, and behind him Cameron Twyman in the Comtech Racing entry, British driver in a British car. Carlos Sainz leads, or for a British team at any rate, it's not a British car. Carlos Sainz leads from Ollie Rowland at Fortec, again another British driver in a British team. And Sergei Sorokin right behind us as we ride in third with Roberto Meri.
Well, I have to say Carlos Sainz Jr. has really broken the back of Rowland's challenge, because the gap out to 4 seconds now, those 4 fastest laps in a row just showed that he had the pace there the whole time, and he's just got a little bit more of a comfortable cushion. Ollie Rowland will be pleased with his second place at the moment, though, because he's going very strongly compared to Meri and Sorokin behind. He's got a gap of a good couple of seconds, so a lonely race for Ollie Rowland as we enter the final echelons, 14 minutes till the checkered flag. Still, anything can happen, Martin. You know, it can still pour in rain. Carlos Sainz Jr. can drive off. Yep. This is not over yet, so don't go anywhere.
Well, one of the things, of course, with changeable weather is the leader is the first to arrive where you get to that band of rain. So, whoa! And a big moment there. Massive moment for Roberto Meri.
That was as big as it gets.
Just to remind you that an hour of drizzle, if you haven't been on a curb, it'll have an hour of drizzle on it, and it will be as slick as ice. And Meri had an absolute lock-stops tank slapper there. That was luck rather than judgment that got that one back.
I mean, he hit the lock-stops there. I mean, that was as big as it gets. Quite how he managed to tidy that up as quickly as he did. I really don't know. As you say, that could have been luck rather than judgment. Well, he had the skill to get out the throttle and to correct it, but quite how he managed to then get the car into the right-hander that follows closely after.
That was a Chuckle Brothers moment, wasn't it? To you, to me, to you. I've got it, I haven't, I have. Yeah, Sorokin must have been rubbing his hands with glee there for a moment, but it just didn't give him enough. See Ollie Rowland not too far in front of them going through shot. He's only 4 seconds ahead of Mary. And Sorokin just a fraction behind. But that doesn't look quite like 4 seconds anymore. The gap to Carlos Sainz at the end of the last lap was 3.6 seconds, first to second. And Sainz last time round lapped again half a second quicker than Ollie Rowland. Not fastest lap times still, but...
No, that was slower.
No, 43.8 to 44.3. I had to read it twice as well.
No, that's the best lap.
That's the best lap. No, so you're right, half a second slower. So Sainz has done what he needed to do and has just opened up enough of a margin. But as you said, Tom, if there is a rain shower, Sainz will be the first man there and he'll be the man skating off because there's not as much grip as they'd hoped.
Exactly, and he, predominantly speaking, has two speeds, doesn't he? He has flat out and stop. So he will arrive on that element of tarmac flat out because that's his style and that's what makes him so exciting to watch.
Now, what is the drama going on the Fortec pit wall? Their drivers are second and fourth, but they seem to be very confused about something. I'm not quite sure what.
Yeah,
you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 down the pit straight. Sainz from Rowland, still 3.6 seconds. That gap's not really growing much. And then another nearly 3 seconds back to the battle for third, Roberto Meri and Sergei Sorokin.
So they did exactly the same time that time around. 46.1 for the pair of them. And Roberto Meri very quick, 45.3, so was Sorokin. So third and fourth place battle going very, very well indeed. That said, Rowland in a 46.1, although Sainz did that time as well, that could have been what the discussion is about. I wonder if Rowland is speaking to the team about something that's awry with his car. Pure speculation, but with 11 minutes left on the clock, you know.
Well, Sainz and Rowland both going slower than the battle for third, despite the fact that they're on their own in clear air. Sainz doing just enough, as you said. You know, the old adage is you want to win at the lowest speed possible, unless you're Senna, in which case you want to be the fastest on every lap that is humanly possible. But that is the way. You don't want to overextend the car if you don't have to. I mean, they are racing cars. They are designed to be driven absolutely as fast as is possible, but you don't need to do that as long as you are keeping your focus.
Yeah, I think, you know, the easiest way to sum it up is these drivers are pushing 100%, but as a racing driver, you're used to taking risks, and sometimes you take calculated risks, and sometimes you just throw a little bit of caution to the wind, and that's really the bracket that you're in when you're really pushing. Meri and Sorokin, they've been nose to tail for pretty much the whole of the race, and well, the leader's back on it again now, so my bit of speculation has evaporated.
Half a second quicker in the middle sector on that lap alone, Sergei Sorokin, his personal best. So he still has speed that he can't quite use. So Lamberg running down into the braking area like he's on corrugations there. I'm not sure the track is that bumpy.
He's got flat spots.
Yeah, maybe he has had a massive lockup behind Marco Sorensen.
If he had any feelings going into this race, they've probably fallen out by now.
Yeah, if he had any eyeballs in his sockets, they've probably fallen out as well. That gap yo-yoing up and down. Not an awful lot of overtaking, you've got to say. I would have expected perhaps a little bit more than that here. I suppose it is the way. It's not the most modern Grand Prix circuit, but there are a lot of constant radius corners, which doesn't give you an awful lot of opportunity.
And there's gravel traps as well, so
yeah,
thing of the past now.
Properly old school. As Silverstone proved, or as Kimi proved at Silverstone, gravel traps are not necessarily always a bad thing.
Yeah, I read a press release the other day, and it was a press release from a driver, I can't remember where, but he was saying, you know, I really like this place, it's got undulations, it's got gravel traps. So that's a sign of the times, isn't it?
Yeah. To be properly old school, of course, it needs catch fencing or telegraph poles or something like that. However,
straw bales.
I think it's just a slightly loose camera on Zoll Amberg's car. It can't possibly be shaking him that much.
You'd be really surprised if you've locked the front tyres and you've got two big flat spots. I mean, do you remember Kimi Raikkonen in Formula 1 here many years ago? It actually caused such a big vibration, the front suspension broke.
Yep. Well, Nelson Piquet had a tyre rip itself to pieces here in a GP2 race as well after flat spotting battling with Lewis Hamilton. So it is definitely possible. Roberto Meri still holding off Sergei Sorokin. So one of them is going to be going, yep, back on the podium, and the other one's going to be going, curses. Either that, or a long way back, Marlon Stockinger is going to inherit a third place. How far back is he? How big of an incident does it have to be? He is 7.2 seconds back. It has to be quite an incident. So last lap lunge into the Mercedes arena might do it for him.
And it'll probably be Sorokin giving it the Muttley impression underneath his helmet, because he started third, Meri started fourth, so they've reversed it, and that'll be frustrating. It's always difficult to go backwards as a racing driver.
A few spots of rain that started this race at the Nürburgring have just about dried up. No sign of the big shower that we were expecting. Chances are somebody's going to inherit one today, but who knows? It may not be the Formula Renault 3.5 field. 7 minutes and change remaining, then the final lap. Carlos Sainz Jr. leading from Ollie Rowland, and as we look at the battle for third place, Roberto Meri ahead of the red, white and blue SMP racing car of Sergei Sorokin. The Fortec team with their cars in second and in fourth. And again, Sorokin leaving big dark marks off the corner, showing just how hard he's chasing Tom Gaymore. Still not so much grip on this track that the cars can't spin up the tyres.
Yeah, well, they've got more torque and more power, really, these 3.5 cars. With the newer regulations, obviously all these drivers are pretty au fait with these cars being out for a couple of years now, but they've taken away a little bit of rear grip. They've taken away the lips that used to be on the floor, that the side skirts that we used to have attached to. So therefore, less grip at the rear of the car, and certainly in low temperatures and low grip scenarios, then certainly plenty of opportunity for the drivers to get it wrong on the exit. That said, Meri's very, very aggressive with the throttle. If you watch the way he drives, he's very, very aggressive, and he's really using the performance of the Michelin tyre and kind of comfortable with the fact that it's not going to go off. If he was on a Pirelli, he'd be in all sorts of bother, but he's not. So all credit to him. He's found a way that works on this Michelin tyre for him, and he can be that aggressive. Sorokin has to almost follow him, because obviously if you're going to get the run on the car in front down the straightaway and trying to pass him into the braking zones, then you're going to have to be equally as quick out of the corner. So that for me is where Meri's very, very strong.
Meri born out of time, perhaps. Maybe he needed Cosworth engine and cross-ply tyres if he likes driving it on the throttle quite that much. Carlos Sainz now from 3.6 out to 4.2 seconds in front of Ollie Rowland. The gap grows. 5 minutes plus a lap to go, and even Sainz isn't averse to leaving rubber out of the final corner. Dad there watching from the background in the monitors as Ollie Rowland comes down into the first corner. Second place.
You could almost hear something with a broken exhaust there, couldn't you?
Well, we heard one in Russia, didn't we? It was in the middle of a little gaggle, and you could definitely hear it really farting away badly. Couldn't quite identify who it was. In fact, one of the 2-litre races as well. I think Alexander Albon, who's going to start on pole for the 2-litre race here. I think he had a broken exhaust in one of the races in Russia as well. It's just such a horrible noise. It's worse on a racing car almost than it is on a road car. Yeah,
and I definitely heard as Sainz was coming out of the last corner. I don't know if it's him or somebody else, but somebody sounded very, very almost throaty, didn't they? Sounded flat.
Yep. Well, I thought Russia was fairly sparse on overtaking. Looks like the Nürburgring is just about there as well. Hungaroring to come next. Yahoo, the overtaking central that is the Hungarian Grand Prix track.
Monaco without walls.
Yeah, Monaco without overtaking. what you need is a proper shower to jockey things up a little bit. Looking at the orange car of Zoll Amberg on the tail of this trio. Marco Sorensen for Tech 1 in between, and Oscar Tunio, the Ponce Racing car, is escaping now because the black and blue car of Sorensen is feeling the pace, and Zoll Amberg really twitching around all over.
Zoll Amberg's driven very well this year. He was almost nowhere, and he won't mind me saying that, last year, but he's really progressed this year. He's come back, and it would have been a challenge for him mentally, but if you look at his results, he's been consistently in and around the top 8, with that disastrous Spa weekend really hindering him, meaning he's down in 8th. Without that weekend, he probably would have been in the top 6 in points. So Zoll Amberg from 23rd or something like that last year in World Series by Renault, really actually showing that if you come back and you've got the right mindset and you learn the right lessons the year before, then you can put things right.
And we saw Zoll Amberg with very busy hands out of the final corner, and Marco Sorensen there with very busy hands and feet into the first corner. Really overcooked it and just about kept it on the track.
Yeah, I think Sorensen's really struggled this year. Tech 1 a good team, but he hasn't had a teammate, and you know, I think that's really hurt him. He's got multiple wins in World Series by Renault and is used to finishing in the top 7 or 8 in the championship, but really in 2014 not having a teammate, that big accident at Monza's probably put the wind up him a little bit, and yeah, it just hasn't quite come together for him. But this time around, this is not a bad result for him, but where is he now? Down in the championship standings. He's he's down in 12th. He's got 1 podium to his name, but you know, the rest of the finishes, you know, 3 15ths, 2 retirements. It's not great for Sorensen.
No, and it has, unfortunately, you know, coming back and failing to perform well, sort of undone all the good work he did in his first season here with Lotus, and he just now looks, you know, like last year's man, unfortunately. He needs to go and do something different to jumpstart his career.
Yeah, absolutely, because I remember in 2011 when he was Richie Stanaway's teammate, he was very, very fast, wasn't he? He still is fast, but just not when it counts.
Yeah. Ooh. Now, is that somebody blowing up, or is that suddenly a bit of cloud drifting across the track? Somebody's blown up. That's oil. There is a lot of oil down there.
Everyone's going straight on.
Or is it rain with 1 lap left? That would just be insanely late. Mavlanov, who had that incident earlier on with Pierre Gasly, trying to get inside the Tech 1 car in front of him, of Kelis, and that is for 17th, and it is raining harder. However, last lap, no, 1 more lap after this to go. We could be in for a hugely dramatic final few moments. Well, there is the cloud of smoke. Now, you're coming up the hill, there's a huge cloud of tyre smoke. How can you not be braking earlier? All right, you've got somebody behind you, I understand that. But, you know, the indication was there, Tom, hanging in the air. Somebody's had a monster lockup.
Well, you know, Celis Jr., he's a rookie, and...
Ooh, and suddenly it's on for 3rd, because here is Roland and Sirotkin. So what has changed? I beg your pardon, Roland and Mary. Where is Sirotkin?
This is
Sirotkin
interesting
has
now.
dropped off, and Roland has had a bit of a bobble somewhere. No sign of Carlos Sainz. He was 8.2 ahead of the line.
Very wet.
It's very wet, and this could end up, Sainz has gone. This could end up being very dramatic indeed. 1 to go after this. Whoever clings on best is going to end up on the podium. Roberto Meri and Ollie Rowland showing just how it is, and Sirotkin in the background not having any of that, creeping around the inside line. Mary's going to send it.
He's retired. Roland's gone. So that was the sound I was listening to. That was what we were looking at when the Fortec crew was struggling on the pit wall.
The last lap of the race, it's his oil.
But it's got back going.
It is creeping around, but he is now off the podium. It's going again, and Sirotkin weaves around, desperate for grip, and Roland drives around the outside of him, but he's on all that rubber. Now he cuts to the inside.
So Roland did stop, and he was looking at his steering wheel.
Yeah.
And it wasn't going, now it's going again. How often do we see that with modern-day single-seaters?
If there's not a big slick underneath it and it's not missing bits, it's always electronics. Carlos Sainz leads 7.5 seconds ahead of the line. It's still relatively dry here, but as they get further up the hill, that's when they run into the rain. So now Roberto Meri is second, Sergei Sorokin in third, and one lap has robbed Ollie Rowland of a potential finish. In fact, 30-odd seconds, or not even 30 seconds, about 12 seconds, Sainz needed to be slower to get to the line to finish it a lap earlier. So that is really tough for Ollie Rowland.
But for Ollie Rowland, he can still get a really good jump on Pierre Gasly.
He'll be right behind Gasly in the points. He was 15 behind. He won't be in front of him. Carlos Sainz Sr. is under the awning, watching the action from Dam's pit wall. Sainz Jr. sticks it into top gear and chunters around. Top gear, Ted, now all the way to the line. It doesn't matter, just get there. You've got more than enough gap, and look how slow he's being. That is about the speed I would be driving this car around. Desperate, in the dry, desperate to get to the line. He wins it.
Nearly spins it.
And, well, that was him doing a stoppie and then flooring the throttle again. Oh, and Zolamberg goes very wide indeed.
Beski Visser, I think. That's Celis and Mavnanov.
You're right. That is Celis and Mavlanov as Beitske Visser goes off, and this is Zolamberg right across the line. Rowland gets to the line in fourth. Marlon Stockinger didn't catch him, is fifth. Behind Matthias Lane. You're absolutely right, that is Celis. And Mavlanov. Mavlanov's got by Cam Twyman, who didn't fancy it on the last couple of laps in this weather. I've got to say, I'm not entirely sure I blame him.
So Rowland did come across the line in fourth. That's important for his championship campaign. He'd be disappointed because it could have been second, but still, that's a big heap of points for him.
Well, 10 points go begging there up against Carlos Sainz Jr., so it is, you know, points. It is a point score that he needed, but that 18 points for second place would have been an awful lot better for him. So, drama at the end of the race here in the Nürburgring, but Carlos Sainz holds on to win it.
At the heart of the World Series by Renault with Elf.
Rain at the end on the final lap in the Nürburgring could not deny Carlos Sainz the victory that he had worked for the previous 3/4 of an hour. From pole position, dominated the race, and a shock result as Roberto Meri and Sergei Sorokin complete the podium. They had battled all the way through for third place until the very last lap, when Ollie Rowland's second place car died on him momentarily and he dropped down the order. He, though, does make it to the line in fourth place. Marlon Stockinger some way behind in fifth. Matthias Lane, Pietro Fanti, Oscar Tunio, Zolamberg and Marco Sorensen complete the point scorers, and Carlos Sainz, pole and fastest lap and race win, grabs the big bag of points. So maximum score, Tom Gamble, for Carlos Sainz, and he's driving the Red Bull car around the track today as well. In these conditions, that could be entertaining for him.
Yeah, it could be indeed. The halfway house leader, so to speak, in the championship gets a prize run in the Red Bull Junior car, and that is Carlos Sainz Jr. No contract obligations causing him to miss out on that. I say that because many of the drivers in this championship do have links to other Formula One teams, which can be quite complicated. We've seen that in years gone by. Let's listen to Carlos.
Victory of the season from pole position. At the early stage, beginning of the race, Ollie Rowland was pushing hard behind you.
Yeah, at the beginning of the race was very tricky because I think we had 7 laps with consecutive yellow flags, either sector 1 or 2. So you couldn't push. I just needed to keep the gap with Oliver. I know that he couldn't catch me because also it was yellow for him. So yeah, I used that time also to save some tires towards mid-race where the track was completely dry and I could open a good gap. And finally made it into a finish line however I could because it started raining really heavily. And I just wanted to bring the car home because this is a special victory coming back from Moscow where we had a difficult weekend. Finally we are back and so happy with this.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Well, very good point he made, of course. Not able to set fastest laps with the yellow flags out down at the Dunlop curve for the first 7 laps, and that allow the drivers to keep their tyres in one piece. I mean, he made it all his own at the start. Great getaway from the grippy side of the track. And from there on in, he left Ollie Rowland to dice for second place. First for Roberto Meri, and then to try and catch Sainz himself. But Tom Gaymore, Carlos Sainz driving with the sort of composure and maturity that suggests that he's got all the confidence and everything else he needs at his disposal.
Yeah, he sounds like he's really got his head screwed on now. Coming into 2014, he's got his sights firmly set on Formula One and looking every bit capable of that big step up. I mean, his 5th win, his 6th pole today, and yeah, just so mature, controlled the race so well. And then when it really counted, when the yellow flags went in, those 4 fastest laps of the race in a row really broke the back of Rowland's charge. I felt Rowland drove very well. I felt Meri drove very well as well. Someone who didn't, Roman Mavlinov, needlessly coming across on Pierre Gasly.
Yeah, the onboard from Gasly is the final evidence. I can't see that stewards will penalise Gasly for that. He had nowhere to go, Mavlinov did. Well, this was the moment of the race for Ollie Rowland. Car coming down into the braking area and slowing down of its own volition, which is not what you need as a racing driver. It did finally cough back into life. He must have been control-alt-deleting furiously to try and get the wretched thing to go, which it did. And Carlos Sainz coming out of the final corner at possibly the slowest speed ever for a race winner at the Nurburgring, creeping around, desperate not to loop it around and give away the win. And he didn't. He claims victory here, and fastest lap, and pole position, all the bonus points, and that is just going to look at that, extend his advantage. Ollie Rowland in second would have overhauled Pierre Gasly for second in the championship, but 4th place not quite enough. However, now look at that, 6th place, 6 points rather, between Roberto Meri and Pierre Gasly. Gasly, Tom Gaymore, has got to qualify properly tomorrow, or he is going to lose any chance of this championship.
Yes, we had the fog on Friday, we had the fog this morning. I mean, Gasly will wake up on Sunday and think, oh my word, please don't be foggy, because he needs, as you say, to be in the right position to challenge Meri and Rowland tomorrow, because there's no doubt